Hello YouTube, Redneck Reloader here. Thanks for joining me again. I haven't made a video in a while, mainly because I haven't had anything to really do. I don't make these videos for entertainment purposes. I just make them if I feel I have something to share. But I'm going to do something new tonight, which I just started doing this week, which I'm kind of excited about. I am going to be reloading some 40 Smith & Wesson. These are the bullets I'm going to be reloading. They're 180 grain full metal jackets from Everglades Ammo. I've got 15 cases set up here. I've got my Lyman case checker, which works real good with the 40 cal. And I've got my dies, and I was going to talk about them. One of them use CCI, small pistol primers. So, one of the reasons I haven't done this sooner, 40 cal is definitely one of the rounds that I wanted to load. Because it's my everyday carry gun. I carry a Glock 27 in a 40 cal, but I haven't been able to find dies at a reasonable price. Now I didn't want to buy brand new dies because I'm kind of cheap, and I don't shoot this gun very often. As I said, it's my everyday carry. I shoot it enough to be proficient with it, but it's such a small gun in 40 cal. It's not a real comfortable gun to shoot. It's not a gun that I'm going to take out and shoot 200 or 300 rounds over, the course of a day or something with. I just take it out once a month, shoot a few rounds, stay proficient with it. So I wanted a good set of dies, but I didn't want to go out and buy a brand new set because I was finding the 40 caliber dies to be pretty doggone expensive compared to other calibers. And I think the reason why, not too awfully long back, you couldn't hardly give a 40 caliber away. I remember my son had one that he was trying to get rid of, and he was taking it around to different gun shops and trying to trade it off and stuff, and they wouldn't even take it for a trade. And it was a very nice 40 cal SIG, but they said they had shelves full of them and didn't want any more 40 cals. So I couldn't understand why I couldn't find a set of used dies. Obviously 9mm 45, they've been around a lot longer. So there's a lot of older sets of dies out there and stuff available for them. But I think what it is now the popularity of 10mm has picked up. And so now people are buying up the dies because you can use the same one for 40 cal or 10mm. But anyway, I got lucky and found a set for $20. I was really tickled pink with these. There are RCBS dies. This is not the original box form, but this is the box I came in. But they're carbide taper crimp dies, and they are in fantastic shape. I think somebody might have been using them in a progressive because they were locked down and a little rusted in place when they came in, so it took me a bit to get them all loosened up and take them apart and clean them all. And the lock rings have been changed. This one hasn't, but some of them have been changed to like the Lyman style, which works a little bit better. But I took a little cleaning to get everything broken loose and working good and stuff, but they are in very nice shape, and I've been real happy with them so far. So we're going to get started and load some 40 cal, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about my load data that I'm using and stuff when we get to that point. So right now I'm just going to put in my decapping and resizing die. I'm going to go a little bit how I set it up. I don't always do this, but I'm going to this time. First off, your decapping pin, it's only supposed to be sticking out. I don't remember the measurement, but it's supposed to be like the thickness of 2/4. And a lot of people starting out get a little carried away and stick that pin out a little bit too far, end up bending them, breaking them. So that's about how far I've got my pin out there. That should be plenty. So what I'm going to do is I'll reposition the camera so you can see the press. Sorry folks, I know it's not great production value. Okay, now I've got my shell holder in place, and I'm going to raise my ram, and I'm going to screw in my die until it just touches the ram. Just touches the shell holder, I mean. And that's where I'm going to lock it down. It's just got just a hair of cam over, not really much at all. You don't want too much cam over with the carbide dies because you don't want to break that carbide insert, ramming that up into there too tightly. So I'm going to start these. Now, I fire these in a Glock, and they do get a little bit of that Glock bulge down at the bottom. So after I resize all these, I'm going to make sure that bulge comes out. And if it doesn't, I'm going to pitch the cases, because I don't want any danger of them blowing up on me there. But I don't have to lube these. Sometimes I will put just a little bit of lube on the cases, just to kind of make the process go along easier if I'm doing a whole bunch, but I'm just doing these 15, and there's no point in it. They're all going through just fine. So this is all I'm doing with this part of it. I've shown you how to set the dye up, and you just run it through, primers come out, no problems. So I'm going to finish the rest of these up, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Okay, I've got them all sized and deprimed, and I've inspected them all. And one step I did with these, I don't usually do with pistol rounds, but after I sized them, I just dropped them in my case checker just to make sure that they fit okay. And that is just because where I shoot these out of a Glock, and they do get that Glock bulge at the bottom. I just want to check the cases and make sure they're okay before I do put any more work into them. If they're not going to fit, then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of them at this point. So there's no sense in me going through and expanding them and trying to fit a bullet to them and priming them and everything else. So, but they all checked out good. So I'm moving on to my next die now. This is my expander ball. And the way this one works, I'm going to run the ram all the way up, and I'm going to screw this down, the outer die, until it just touches the shell holder. Right there. And then I'm just going to back it up like a half a turn. I just want it backed off enough, and then lock the ring down. I just don't want it coming into contact with it at all. So next step is I'm going to expand the case mouth to accept the bullet. So I'm going to go ahead and get me a bullet here, so I've got one to play with. And I already showed you these are the Everglades ammo, 180 grain, full metal jacket, flat point. I think you can probably see those. So what I'm going to do is run this up in here, and then I'm going to start lowering this expander ball down until I feel it touch the case. And then I'm going to lower my ram. I'm going to turn it about a half a turn, and I'm going to run it in. Then I'm going to check it. Now, I have found with this it doesn't take very much, so this is probably pretty close, but I'm going to try it. And yep, this fits in there pretty nice. I could probably even back it off just a hair, but it does not take much at all with these dies. So I think that's pretty good. Now I'm going to, since I've got it on here, I'm going to go ahead and prime this case. So there, it's belled, primed, we're good to go. Move on to the next one. Do the same thing. We'll go ahead and prime it. And it should be good, but I'm just going to double check my settings just to make sure that bullet's seating in okay. It is. So nothing wrong with that at all. So now just go through and take the rest of these and do the same thing. Just bell the case mouth, and then at this point is when I usually prime. It doesn't have to be done at this step. You can, I've have primed and deprimed on the same step, but you just have to be careful when you do that. If you have the decapping die in there, because of when you prime it on the press like this, I'll show you. Once I get to this point where I've expanded it, and now I'm going to lower it and prime it, and now I have to let it go back up. I have to raise the ram again in order to let the priming arm flop back like that. And if you get a little carried away, if you've got the decapping pin in, you can actually decap the case you just did. So that's the only thing you have to watch if you decide to reprime at that stage. That's why I usually do it at this stage. So all right, I'm going to stop the camera again, and I'm going to knock the rest of these out, and then we'll come back. Okay, these cases are all primed, and the case mounts are flared, and so now I'm going to add my powder, and you can see there's no scale around here. This is the powder I'm using. It's a unique pistol powder, or pistol powder, shotgun powder. Actually very, very versatile powder. This is what I'm using. This is what I use for all my pistol rounds. Working at my load data, I was going to talk about that a little bit. There was not a lot of information that I could find online and stuff on 40 cal, and I don't actually have I've got a loading manual, but it's an older one that 40 cal's not in. I usually get my loading data from the manufacturer's website, and once again, they didn't give a whole lot. From what I could find for this bullet, at 180 grain, the range is somewhere between 4.6 and like 6.3. I started out mid-range and I decided to try it at 5.5, and they actually shot very good for me. They were clean, which, you know, unique. That's, if there's one complaint, it burns a little dirty sometimes, but it seems like you can kind of get in that sweet spot where you're a little more in the hotter end. It tends to burn cleaner, and they were also very accurate for me. But I like to use the lead dippers, and I have this one. It's the 0.7 cc dipper, and this throws around 5.7 grains of unique. It's actually about 5.6 and a half. If you throw, if I throw 10 throws and I weigh it, it'll come out about 56 and a half grains. So it's throwing about 5.6 and a half. So I said, well, 5.5 is good. I'd say 5.6 and a half would be good too. So the last time I loaded them, I just used the dipper, and I took them up, and they ran really good in my gun. I shot, actually these 15 cases I've got here, I shot these, and I shot 15 rounds of factory ammo I had at the targets, and I could not tell the difference with the accuracy. So they seem to be really good, and I don't like to work up a whole lot of different loads. I pretty much will pick one bullet, one powder charge, and I just stick with it, and that's why I like using these dippers. So now my go-to load for this now is going to be these Everglades ammo and this 0.7 cc dipper of unique, which is 5.6 and a half grains. So I'm not planning on buying a lot of different types of bullets or anything. So when I come out here to reload, I don't have to set up my scale or set up my powder thrower or anything. If I just want to knock out a few rounds of these, I'm just going to use my dipper to do it, and I know that it'll be good. So my technique, I use a little cut-off Dixie cup here, and I dip the dipper in like that so that the powder flows into it, and then I just tap it to level it off. Kind of awkward here with the camera. Kind of tap it a little bit just to level it, and then I dump it and move on to the next one. And as I said, this is throwing somewhere around 5.6 and a half grains. I really don't care if it throws anywhere from 5.5, which I know is a good load for this, to 5.7, because I'm still nowhere close to the max. So as long as I have a round, a load worked out that's not close to max, I will use a dipper on them. And even my 223 rounds, I use dippers with those as well. I've got different dippers that I've made for different powders. So I'm going to go ahead and charge all these, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so now the cases are all charged, and I've got my last die in. This is the crimping, and this crimps it and sets the overall length of the die. Sorry, bumping the camera. Now, I'm going to go ahead and set this die up. The way I'm going to do this, I have a dummy round. I've got a jar here. These are basically about all the rounds that I load. I've made dummy rounds up for each one, and this is no exception. It's got no primer in it. It's just a round that is set to the correct length. So what I'm going to do is put this round in. I got my die, both the cedar plug and the actual die both backed out pretty far. I'm going to run this up, and I'm going to run my die body down until I just feel it touch the brass. And right there. And then I'm going to back it up one full turn. And I'm going to lock the ring down so it's not coming in contact with the brass, because I don't want to be crimping right now. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to seat and crimp these in 2 separate stages, just because here lately I've just found I have less problems that way. If I'm doing a big large amount and it's a big time saver, I might do more, but just for the few I'm doing here, I'm going to set them separate. So now I've still got that round in there. Now I'm going to screw down the seater plug until it touches the end of the round right there. I'm going to lock it down, and that sets my seating depth. So I'm going to take my first round. And by the way, all these cases, I didn't show you this, but I took a little flashlight that I keep out here and shine down in every one of them to make sure that they were loaded, because I don't want to have any squib loads. So I'm just going to set my bullet in there, and then I'm going to run it up in there, and that's going to seat it to the correct length. And I can just set it next to this and double check it, and that looks darn good to me. So that's got that set. I can set my dummy round to the side, and then I just go through and do the rest of these the same way. And this is just, now the case mount is still flared on these, so these are not going to be chambered, even though they are technically, you know, live rounds at this point. They wouldn't chamber in my gun. They still have to be crimped, but this is how we do it, just one at a time here, seating them in there. I've heard you guys talk about them seating, the bullets seating crooked and stuff. I've never really had that trouble. My 9mm die, it's the M-lock die, so when you lock the bullet in, it really like locks in place. This is not the M-lock die, so the mouth is just kind of belled, so the bullet will kind of set a little sideways. It straightens itself right up when I run it up into the die. I don't worry about that. I've never had one seat, you know, sideways or anything where it causes any problem, but I have heard of people mentioning if you have a problem with it going into battery or something, that could be the cause. But see, I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but that one's pretty crooked. But when I set it up in there, it just straightens right up and centers itself. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these, and then we'll crimp them. Okay, now we've got the bolts all set to the correct length. Now all we have to do is crimp them, and they're ready to go. Or not even really crimping these, you're really just taking the bell back out of them. This is a Lyman ammo checker. I use this with some of my pistols. Now with my 45 ACP, I have to use my gun's barrel, because I can get rounds that'll drop in this and seat fine, and they won't seat in my gun because the chamber's too tight. But my 9mm and the 40 Smith & Wesson, I found if they work in here, they'll work in my gun. So this makes it really handy. I can just keep this out at my bench, and I don't have to pull my barrel every time. So these rounds now, even though they would fire, they won't chamber in my gun, and as you can see, they stick up about halfway. And the reason why is because they're still belled. So I'm going to set the crimp on this now, and I could have done it at the same time I was seating it, but I just decided to do it different, separate. So I'm going to back out that plunger way back, because I don't want it touching the bullet and seating it any deeper. And now I'm going to loosen up the outer die body and screw it down. So I'm going to raise this all the way up, and I'm going to screw that die body down. If you remember, I screwed it in until it just touched the brass, and then I backed it out about a turn. So I'm going to turn it in about a 1 full turn, and then about another half. And I'm going to try that, because these don't take very much at all to take that out. So didn't quite go all the way in my ammo checkers, so it's still got a little bit too much bell. So I'm going to turn this just a little further, and once again I want to make sure this plunger is out and not touching the bullet and pushing it any further in. So I'm going to try that, and that dropped all the way in, but it's kind of sticking just a little bit. And I know I can do better than that. So I'm going to crimp it just a little more, like a quarter of a turn. And we're going to try that. And that's what I'm looking for right there. It just drops right in. Well, I guess if I can do this on my hand in front of the camera. It just drops right in. No resistance at all. And it falls right back out. No resistance at all. That's what I'm looking for right there. So that should have my crimp set good. I've got my ring set. I'm going to do another one. Test it in the ammo checker. Yes, it's working good. Check one more. That one works real good. So I'm set. Now I'm just going to run the rest of these through and they're all done. And so that's my video on reloading 40 Smith & Wesson, and it's pretty much the same as 9mm, excuse me, or 45. I use RCBS dies for my 9mm, and I tell you, they are set up the exact same way. I had Redding for my 45, but I actually bought a set of Lee dies for it with the factory crimp die, so it's a little bit different. I'm going to do a video on that one of these days. I haven't ever done one on that, but anyway, this is my 40 Smith & Wesson video. Kind of excited about loading up a new round. I hope maybe you found some useful information there. And this is Redneck Reloader out. God bless.